Teachers are for skills, if you want to learn a skill, but this isn't a skill. This doesn't have anything to do with skills. Contrary to what's often imagined, but yeah, there's no place for teaching in anything to do with this kind of thing. I think it has the advantages that it kind of demystifies things a bit. Like traditionally, it would be a bit like a I don't know, going to sit at the feet of someone in India, like it's I think the online format, it has its advantages and disadvantages, like for everything, social media, and it's a neutral thing, but it's what we make of it. And it's nice to have the opportunity to converse on the subject. And there seems to be some resonance, for it. So as long as that's flowing, it's kind of like that's why I find it difficult to keep a schedule about it as well, because it kind of, things come out as they come out, Yeah, no fireworks, exactly. Nice way of putting it. Have you experienced anything that could be labeled as growth through understanding? Wow, I don't really have to think about that. Yeah, I would say that I definitely as understanding, I would say, especially in the way that people relate to each other. Yeah, seeing what kind of ego dynamics happen, how people send each other in the wrong direction, take other people's energy, encroach on other people's space, those kind of things. I would call that understanding. And then growth, if we can talk about growth in life, like how we grow up and process of maturation, that kind of thing, like in that sense, yeah. But no, I wouldn't say that it has something to do with understanding anything about like the unseen world, put it that way. But it's not understanding in the sense of learning, or that's why also there are no teachers. It's not a process of, it's not something it's a natural process. It's like a plant grows. That's the same that happens with us. Is it therefore implicit? You mean, do you mean freeing from the ego? or like an end of ego, that's definitely a natural process. Yeah, there it is implicit. I don't know what you mean exactly by that, but it's that's like where everything is heading. If you're going to talk in the way of growth heading somewhere, some direction or something, which there isn't really, but then yes, that's um, like for human beings who have who kind of bring this ego energy or cultivate this ego energy, that it's implicit because it doesn't have any energy of its own. So it does burn out eventually. That's, yeah. We're born free, and to this freedom we return. Yeah, of course, that's in the DNA. Like the freedom is the DNA. It's in the DNA. All of nature is free. Then there are like spiritual add-ons that we've created, and we call things enlightenment and self-realization. Most of the time we don't even know what we're talking about, really. Those are add-ons, those would be the fireworks. You're saying like no fireworks. Yeah, there are so many of those. There's so much confusion and like misinformation and misconceptions, which are the ones that are misguided. They just go into the direction of shining some light or getting some to some state of personal glory. So but freedom is a totally natural, organic thing. Yeah, of course. It's life. It's life. It's really the life force. It's energy. What there really is energy, and energy is free. So ego, you could call it, it's an attempt. It's an energy, like an attempt to control the energy, which is in vain anyway. Um, I don't know what more to say about it. Yeah. But how do you mean the question? Like, maybe tell me a little bit more. Like, why would you think it's not implicit, or how would it not be implicit or natural? But most people do not think of these things. Yeah, okay. But it's not necessary also to think of these things. So are you saying freedom happens regardless of thinking on it? Yeah, of course, of course, of course. In many cases, it can be much safer not to think on it, because because if this claiming is going on, then even the freedom, like, it's a very delicate thing. That can be, claimed, and then there can be pride about an insight or a glimpse that one has had. So then thinking on it, and there can be this whole structure and self delusion that's created around it. So maybe in some cases it can just be much safer not to think about it at all. Or if someone doesn't even think in those terms, or can still be free, of course. We are all free. Yeah, fundamentally, by nature. The ego is just an illusion. So it's not really there, but yeah, we're talking in relative terms, but yes. So freedom and lack of freedom are equally nonsense. No, I wouldn't say they're nonsense. No, because the ego does this illusion. So it's like saying, we're talking about an illusion. Let's talk about it. Excuse me. So let's talk about an illusion, yeah, any illusion, just the term illusion. It The definition of it is something like something that doesn't exist. But we still talk about an illusion. So we're saying there is an illusion in a way. Does that make sense? It's an illusion, but there is an illusion. And what that is there's some energy of claiming that goes on with humans, that is a form of slavery. The effects of it are, it is a form of slavery. So I wouldn't say that it's nonsense to talk about this, then like they're relative terms, but that doesn't mean relative things are nonsense. Yeah, energy, the behavior of energy. I mean, just because we can't talk in absolutes doesn't mean that it's nonsense. Think about the word valley. Yeah, what does a valley describe? It describes the space essentially between two mountains. Yeah, there's ground, there's the earth, but then why not just call it earth? So what we're describing with the word valley is a space kind of, but it doesn't really exist. Yeah, in that sense, like what are we describing? We're describing some empty space which has kind of got some parameters because of something else, but we're not saying mountainside and ground, we're saying valley. But is it nonsense because the valley isn't really a thing? Is it nonsense to talk about a valley? No. How can we know what non-duality might be if we construct it with words and logic behind? Also, how do we know if that's really it when we never experienced true non-duality? Yeah, how can we know what non-duality might be? Non-duality is a term, yeah. It's like, again, like words are very relative. So just like the example of a valley, non-duality just describes something, but it's not a thing. It's just saying, it's like it's a characteristic, maybe. It's just saying that there aren't two things. That's what it says. That whatever this is, like everything, when we think about like, oh, why are we here and what is all this, and even what fuels like research, right? It's curiosity. So the natural curiosity to know, what is this, what's going on here, why are we here, all these kind of questions. Non-duality says that whatever it is, it's undivided. It's not divided. It's not split in fundamentally. It's not split into two. There isn't some chasm between two sides, good and evil, and this kind of thing. Yeah. Non-duality just says that there is just an attribute of whatever this is, of the cosmos, of the whole, so that it's not split into two. So that's as far as I would go with that. And then I guess that question kind of falls away. Like, also, how do we know if that's really it? Like what's really it? And yeah, what are we talking about then? Do you mean freedom? I mean, the message space is a bit limited, so maybe say some more about it if you want. How do we know if that's really it when we never experience true non-duality? No, it's not something that we experience. It's an attribute of what there is. So even our nature, it's by definition, it cannot be divided. There can't be a good and a bad part to us. Yeah, there isn't an evil. Like, we don't have a good nature or better nature or higher self or a lower self or evil part or these kind of things. That's all. There's no experiencing true non-duality. Like, if someone says that they've had a non-dual experience, then that's complete gibberish nonsense. No, if we talk about freedom, that's not it's not an experience. It's like, it's more maybe like having some how do you say, what is this, mirage, when you see he's like in the heat on the horizon, you see something appearing that isn't there, a mirage, I think it is. So it's like having a mirage in front of our eyes, and then that's not there anymore. It's maybe a bit like that, like a filter through which we see everything or experience everything, assess everything, and that filter isn't there anymore. But then you can't say that we're then experiencing non-duality. It's just, it is what it is always. What are my thoughts on the practice of satsang? I don't know anything about the practice of satsang. I just know that the word satsang means like meeting in truth, or like meeting around truth, maybe. But as a practice, I don't know what that would entail. Let me know. Maybe I can tell you what I think about it. Do you mean like gurus and people sitting listening to a guru or something like this? I have experienced all that stuff, and although I've had insights, I'm tired of the fireworks. Okay, so you mean that when you say the practice of satsang, you mean the kind of the formality of this sort of holy atmosphere? Is that what you mean? In some setting where there's a guru and then there are followers, quote unquote? Is that what you're referring to? Okay. Well, my thoughts on that would be that there's a hell of a lot of charlatanery out there. But if it's genuine, so in India, there's a different vibe to things completely. Yeah. So, like a guru in India, guru means teacher. So, someone learning an Indian classical instrument, for example, will call their teacher guru. It doesn't mean that there's some spiritual guide or something, but the guru is a term that just means teacher. So if you have then someone, like people sitting, someone is talking, people are sitting, and there is something really truthful being communicated, if it really is like, let's like uh, so like real satsang, really sitting around and just talking about the truth. Yeah. um in Jamaica, the Rastas will talk about reasoning. So you're just sitting around and you're talking about the truth. But if you're going to talk about the truth, what that really means, because there is no absolute thing called truth, it just means having a conversation where there's no ego involved. So everyone comes correct. Yeah. So like is in the expression, come correct or don't come at all. So you come, you talk with, there's a certain honesty, a certain integrity. Okay. So if that's like, if there's like a real correctness there, then yeah, of course it's going to be beneficial. If it's done, then it's done with love. Then you're talking with love. Then it doesn't matter if it's one person talking or everybody's talking together, or that doesn't matter at all. But as you say in your phrase, I am tired of the fireworks, there is so much claiming and so many like bits of subtle pride that enter maybe the person who's speaking, or the one who's following, who sees themselves as such a good follower, or the guru, quote unquote, who thinks they're such a great teacher. Or there is so much subtle sort of flattery around this stuff. So my thought would be that in most practices, or many practices of satsang or instances of satsang, that they're just rubbish. That's not genuine. But the thing itself, like, then you can't really call it a practice of satsang. But because wherever there is a conversation, if you ever have a meaningful conversation with someone and it really, hits home, and there's a real, often these things come when there's some kind of shock. So if someone is grieving, if someone has lost a loved one or something, that's a kind of shock. So it freezes the ego. So then if you've ever noticed that, experienced that, then there's opportunities to really have a meaningful exchange and conversation. That would be a satsang. I don't know why we're using this word, because we're talking about a certain thing. But okay, then that's just an Indian word that means a certain thing. But the heart of it would be that it would be a meaningful conversation with all honesty and no ego involved. But the practice itself, the form of it, yeah, that's tiring and kind of there's something cloying about it, right? Yeah. That's the whole dynamic of the ego, of this illusion, which doesn't have any energy of itself. So it constantly has to feed off the energy that is given, the credence that is given to it. So if satsang promises someone a nice self-image or a negative self-image, yeah, or some kind of, you know, whatever, it's always in the with the intention of drawing attention. Yeah, the ego, all it wants is to be seen. So the concern with how we are seen, that's ego. That's how I would define it. That's what I mean when I talk about it. So there are so many opportunities in every second and everything. It can like put a blanket over everything. We could use anything throughout daily life to kind of try and gain some attention, to prop ourselves up, or negativity as well, self-pity. That's also in the interest of gaining attention from others. So yeah, and spirituality is a big one, because then we're talking like spirituality, non-duality, all these kind of discourses or areas of debate, philosophy. These are the areas where, because what the real point of it would be to go to the root, to really see like what's the root of ego. Yeah, what's really going on, like what games are really being played, and then in that realm to start having claiming and pride and all that stuff. Obviously then that becomes like, yeah, then the fireworks are bigger, because it's like there's some energy there. Of course, we when we talk about these things, there is this natural curiosity, there is a certain sensitivity. I wouldn't say vulnerability, but there is sensitivity, so much sensitivity, right? You wouldn't even want to talk about this subject if you didn't have some kind of sensitivity. Again, that's not to say that someone can't have so much sensitivity but not be interested in this topic. But because we're talking about the kind of the unseen, there is so much energy there. So to claim that's not innocent anymore. Yeah, there are innocent forms of claiming. Someone can go through their life and display some kind of ego behavior, but not really differentiate it at all from what's real, what's true, what the true feelings are. Let's say that they are making efforts in a way to, like, I don't know, to have a great career, to have look good in the standings of others, just because they've been so conditioned that way, so that it can be innocent. But when you're talking in this context, that's not really innocent anymore, because you already come to this with a certain awareness or certain sense of that there is something more. And so yeah, so then the claiming, I guess, gets particularly marked or noticeable or unpleasant or whatever. That's why maybe you get tired. That's why you say you feel tired of the fireworks, because it's quite blatant in a way. Although, having said that, as blatant as it is, it seems like still there is so much fooling and misguidance and people willing to be fooled, basically. I use the Indian word because 90% of non-duality material on YouTube is satsang. I wanted to understand your relationship to this scene. The fireworks are pretty. What do you mean by that? Like, I thought you were tired of the fireworks. If they're pretty, why would you be tired of them? Yeah, my relationship to the scene, I don't really have a relationship to the scene. I find it off-putting how much misguidance there is, in at least in my experience. Yeah, 80%, maybe 90% of people who talk about non-duality are not coming from the right place, like in no uncertain terms. If someone, like, if you look at Chinese philosophy and the principles of yin and yang and all that, that's non-duality, like much more neutrally expressed than with some spiritual hoo-ha. Yeah, so the scene is just the fact of the scene itself being a scene that's already has that stickiness of ego. It's what it really is. It's like why it's a scene, because there is a kind of a um, it's like in philosophy having schools of thought. Yeah, there is already like some demarcation. There's a pure non-duality or a radical non-duality. Then there's some other non-duality. I don't know how many kinds of non-duality there are, but it's just bullshit, really. Um, there, if there is a genuine speaking about this, there will be a unique flavor about it, right? People will express it in different ways. Everybody's completely unique. All forms of life are completely unique. So it can't be that there are different that two people will talk in exactly the same terms. But what you do see in this context of non-duality on YouTube, for example, um, so many people speak in exactly the same way. So then you see there that it's like regurgitated food, chewing pre-eaten food. There's nothing unique about it anymore. So then it's clear that it's just like there's a, oh, I've had an insight and now I'm gonna it's the claiming of the insight is like a mistaken conviction that, oh, now I understand everything. Now I see how it is. Now I'm going to tell people how it is. Yeah. It's off-putting. I find it off-putting. It's nonsense. Okay, fireworks are pretty but impermanent, but I don't get why would be tired of them. My interpretation of being tired of the fireworks was that you mean that you're tired of the this sort of holier than thou atmosphere. Oh, okay, frustrating. So it might be I might have misunderstood you. I don't know then exactly what you mean by the fireworks. I'm assuming you mean the form of it. It's like a repetition from what I heard of and not from what I heard of and not rethinking it and even experiencing it in their own lives. Yes, absolutely, 100%. But if you say this, what you just said, then the answer will be, oh, but there is no experiencing, and you know, there is no me who heard it anyway, and this isn't something to be thought that that is a mental, so thinking doesn't come into it. There will always be, this is what the ego does. There's always an excuse, there's always a way out, there's always a way of turning things. So that's like it's a closed loop, but there's no need to be in that loop at all. In a previous video, you said that you read a lot about Chinese philosophy and traditional Chinese medicine, Taoism, and I guess also Buddhism. No, not Buddhism. What did you like about it? I don't know. I just found it. Well, yeah. I think what I liked about it was the neutrality about Chinese philosophy, Taoism. It's it's the closeness to nature, or it's the realization that nature um, is the expression of the formless in form. Yeah, the physical expression of the unseen, of energy, of the cosmos, whatever you want to call it. That's nature. So that has a it has a yeah, that's that in itself, that's a beautiful way of putting it. Then there's a certain neutrality about Chinese philosophy, I find. There isn't like this there isn't this talk of holiness and sacredness, and all this reference to suffering, and all the misinterpretations that are. But yeah, it's not like I was it's something I came across when I was young. I found it interesting, but it doesn't mean I find it more interesting than Hinduism or Buddhism. I don't know much about Buddhism, but I know there's a lot of misinterpretation of what the Buddha supposedly said. Yeah, I like the Lao Tzu's book, the Tao Te Ching. Maybe also because it's poetry, and I've always liked poetry and literature. So yeah, perhaps I was misunderstood. I'm tired of the scene after 12 years. The pretty fireworks are that which attracted me to keep coming back. Yeah, okay. I hear that you're tired of the scene, um, but then the fireworks, I don't know what you mean exactly. I'm assuming you say yes, the form too. Um, the way that it's being talked about, you said maybe. Okay. Anyway, yeah. No, I no. Initially, I just thought maybe by the fireworks you meant this because you were talking about satsang. So this kind of traditional type setting where someone sits on an elevated place, and you know some like ashram kind of vibe or something. I don't know. Did thoughts massively subside in frequency after the collapse of separation? No, I don't think thoughts have much to do with it. It's maybe the running after thoughts that stops, but it's not like thoughts. Thoughts are a natural thing. They don't. If anyone tells you that they don't think anymore, or that there's like a thoughtless state all the time, then they're just having you on. It's just bullshit. Thoughts are a natural thing. The running after them and getting attached and getting so worried about this, that, and like feeding that a certain thought constantly through some worry or something, that's different. That yeah, that'll stop. But thoughts themselves, no, of course not. Do you not experience chasing after thoughts? I would say it can come up with things that are like not natural. So if I have to deal with certain bureaucratic things or like systematical things which aren't really, like I don't know, like to put it to give like a very generalized example, uh, countries' borders aren't natural, right? This claiming of land and then this nation, and then this nation, and they're like arbitrary separations between countries. Okay, so that's not a natural thing. That's a human-made thing. Like a systematical thing. Then you have passports, then you have permissions, then you have visas, this, that. If it comes to something like that, and there's like a lot of red tape about something, or it's like, some kind of, I don't know, what can it be, like a I don't know, rental contracts, sales contracts, yeah, any of that type of stuff. Then there can be like the preoccupation of like, oh, I have to deal with this thing. Yeah, like maybe we all know the feeling of like getting an email or getting a bill, and it's like, fuck. Yeah, that kind of feeling. Sure, that stuff comes up, but that's because it's kind of jarring. It's not natural to have to go, oh, now I wanted to sell this car, but now I have to go to this place and then that place, but they close at this time. And so I have to run there. And if I don't do this by tomorrow, then I'm fucked. And I have to pay this much to that, like stuff like that. So then there can be like because it's not fucking natural, then there can be like a thinking like, fuck, oh, have I remembered everything? And that can get stressful because it's like, there is like a feeling of like, oh, I've got to keep that in my awareness, otherwise I'm going to miss it. And or like, if have I remembered everything? Yeah, of course those things can happen, but fuck no, not about like, what does this person think about me, or how, like, uh or will I ever uh, make a loads of money, or like, no, like, yeah. So but even if there is some chasing after thought, it's also kind of clear that the maybe, yeah, that stuff does subside, like, because there can be a habit at first, and though like habits definitely go, memories, certain kind of memory structures also go. So it's just a lightening. It's just a I mean, if you think about any moment where you feel, where there's a sense of contentment, or there is some kind of joy, or then how many things fall away? A lot of stuff falls away, but in another moment, it can also be, something can come up, and suddenly there's like something to deal with that is purely systematical, and there's a lot of that stuff. So yeah, of course that'll happen, sure. But it's also clear then that it's quickly clear that chasing isn't really, that's just a habit, or like it's like it's in the ether. This kind of chasing, it's always around. Yeah, like think about the housing market, think about the stock market. What's that based on? It's based on fear. Yeah, I don't know, interest rates will go up and down according to the wars that are going on in the world, or stuff like that, right? So it tells you that it's just fear. If there's optimism, then the market's up, everything goes up, everything, you know. So what I'm trying to say is that it's clear, therefore, that all this stuff is just in the ether. Yeah. And freedom, what freedom is, that there is no more that claiming. It's like, there are thoughts, but they're not considered my thoughts. I don't have. There's no need to say, "Oh, this is my thought." That so the systematical stuff, and the ego stuff. It's those aren't. They can't come in because they're not. It's clear that they're not mine. It's only a claiming of like, if like, I don't know, maybe in the context of this discussion of non-duality. Oh, I still, think in terms of me so much, and I can feel this ego stuff going on. So if I keep saying this, and I keep claiming it, right? Oh yeah, but I'm not free yet. And no. So we make so many quick conclusions that we don't even notice. But these kind of preoccupations, that's the unfreedom, relatively speaking, to keep sort of taking something. Oh, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine, this is how I am, this is what's going on for me, this is, yeah, it's a lot of pseudo certainty. Was it always this way for you, or did understanding enable you to operate so easily? No, I wouldn't say. I Again, this understanding is tricky. It's like maybe like a widening of perspective, like I was saying before. Um, was it always this way for you? I I don't see any. I don't see a time where I had, like, from since early childhood to now, I see there's a continuity there. There's no point where I feel like there was some like ego dominance going on and then that stopped again. Yeah. Like with conditioning, there's suddenly so much ego and then that somehow dissipated or collapsed or whatever. So I do feel some kind of continuity there. And then when I was a kid, I was, maybe that was, I can't call it understanding, because all these things that get talked about in this non-duality scene, uh, I saw these things as a kid. Like I would go to bed at night, and I remember it was for a period of time. Um, I would sort of close my eyes, and I just kind of, it felt like I was going inward, yeah, and that was bottomless. So it just kept going, and then I would see certain things would become clear. For example, that this whole thing, that there is no one really ultimately, or that nothing ever happened. There is no time. History doesn't really exist. Really, nothing ever happened. Nothing will ever happening. Nothing will ever happen. Nothing is happening. Certain things like this. Yeah. So I wouldn't call those things understanding. Um, but I also wouldn't say that I this operating so easily. I don't know about that. Like there's, you know, like the contentment, I wouldn't even know how, where a certain like contentment or lack of discontent would come from. It's a it's a natural thing that's already, it's pre-existing. um yeah, and then I don't know, when I just know when I was like 18, 19, I think, then there was like a real thing of like uh there's no lack. Yeah, like a seeing that there is no lack. It's not like any sense of lack stopped. I wouldn't call it like that, but just a seeing, or maybe it is. I don't know. Anyway, I wouldn't call any of those things understanding. It's more about the heart, really. Um, uh, if I speak from personal experience, if as a kid, when I would see these things, or I would feel like this inner world, I would want to stay with that. I would want to protect that from all at all costs, because it was clear that whatever's going on outside, other humans, other people, especially so-called authorities, parents, teachers, all this, there's a whole different thing going on there. There's ambition and all this stuff, whereas inwardly there isn't that at all. So my thing was always, I want to just like stay there. I want to I don't want that to be invaded by anything else. Like this is real. This is what's real, and this outside is just theater. It's just like nonsense. It's just people's claiming and self-importance. Yeah, that. So, but I wouldn't talk about it in. I wouldn't think of it in terms of understanding. Again, like I said to you at the beginning, maybe an understanding. I could say an understanding about how people relate to each other. Yeah, seeing how the ego games that go on and stuff like that. But so okay, yes, then maybe it does have something to do with, it does ease things, because if you see ego if you take your, because we all see it, if we take our sense of it seriously, if we don't overlook it, like someone slights us in some way, yeah, and we overlook it on because we want to be friends, we want things to be nice. In relationships this happens tons. Like we want things to be smooth, we want things to be right, and we're having a conversation, the other person says something, we feel like, oh, that made me feel like shit, just like a jolt of but I'm just going to go on and carry on, right, in the interest of keeping things nice and smooth. If we do that enough, then we kind of blunt our sense of seeing ego operating, right? But if we see it, if we take these senses of these jolts or whatever it is seriously, and we get a kind of slowly, like a picture emerges of how ego operates, how the games it plays, why it's doing it, just to like gain recognition or energy or importance, or like that the other person will see me as good or important or whatever. Yeah. It's always a compensation for the lack of self-esteem, the lack of self-respect. So it's always, I've always got to look for it outside somehow. So yeah, seeing those kind of patterns going on, you could say it makes things easier, because then there's no way I'm going to get involved. If someone comes at me with some ego business, there's no way I'm going to entertain it or engage with it, or or open myself to someone like that. Like, yeah, I won't even make eye contact with them, like, because that's also, it'll also give some attention, right? So in that sense, yes, okay, it does make it easier, you could say that. But as for in this inner world, let's say this formless world, seeing that, or having intuitions and seeing things there, I wouldn't call that understanding. And I also wouldn't say that it makes anything easier, because actually all there is joy, is silence, is freedom, is so there's no question of making anything easier, operating more easily than otherwise. No. Some of them are not even thoughts, but like feelings, emotions which disturb the experience, and the conscious mind is not aware of it in that moment. Hey, Michael, I don't know. I wouldn't say that feelings can ever disturb the experience, and you might have wrote this a while ago. I don't know what you mean by the experience, but yeah, feelings can't. Emotions, if they're kind of ego emotions or claimed by ego, like some, that can happen, sure, but yeah. Are you aware that the experience you describe is not what most people would describe about themselves? Yeah, of course, sure. I envy you this continuity of this. There can't be any. Hmm. So the continuity I was talking about, I would say I describe it in the sense, like, how people have like midlife crisis. Yeah, they get to it, they pursue a certain maybe ego-oriented goal, and then there's some breakdown, and then there's some, like, now we're going to start going inward, and that kind of thing. That's one thing. That's what I would say with the continuity. I never had that uh, where I felt I went so off track that, like that, from childhood. But that's my unique makeup. That doesn't mean it's better than anyone else's. And if someone has a, like, think of it in a very impersonal way. Yeah. Think about energy. Like, people ask, like, why is there cruelty? Why is this? I don't know. You see trees lining a road, and one tree is really ill. Yeah, you see that it's not well, for example. Then a child might ask, why is this tree not going well? So we can keep asking those things, and curiosity is natural. Ultimately, though, if you think of it in a very impersonal way, there is no reason, like, if energy chooses to manifest in that way, because ultimately what we see as physical is uh, an expression of the formless. Yeah, it just takes shape. Let's say in different shapes. Who are we to say it shouldn't take that shape? Yeah. So in that sense, there can't be any question of someone's experience being better or than someone else's. So then the only issue there would be, and I'm just making a thing of this now, just to as an example to make something clear. The only issue here is the envy, because there is ultimately, again, we're talking relatively, there is no uncontinuity, and the what you think you're looking for resides is in the, and which you already are or have, is in the uniqueness that you are. So there can never be a question that someone else has it better, or no, because the fulfillment, the true, like the expression into form of each individual uniqueness is the point of it all. Yeah, so there can't be any envy. There can't be like it's just a complete waste of energy to look at someone else's, onto someone else's plate, what they have and so on. No, because it's still always going to be, you're always going to fall back on yourself, and it's the point is always going to be the full expression of this, which is unique. Yeah, so then also this goal of some ultimate nirvana, it's too much, it's too glowing. There is not one soupy oneness that someone who is free has gotten to. No, it's just that the expression can come through unfiltered and free. Doesn't ego want to protect itself? Like you were saying, if someone is talking from an ego perspective, you don't want to talk with them. Could that also be your ego? No, no. um no, I was talking to you about the sense of ego that you notice in someone else. Yeah, if there's ego coming towards you, and there it doesn't even matter if you, like, I'm just saying that there's a differentiation. It's something you can sense. Yeah, if you ever saw or something came across your way, an interaction with someone, you think, wow, that's pretty egotistical, then what are you going to do? Then you're going to think, oh, maybe it's the ego in me, and then you start making excuses for that, and the game continues, and the sort of the flattery, mutual flattery continues, and stuff like that. So no. I'm talking, when I talk about an ego, if someone comes at me with an ego perspective, I'm talking about like a willing, like a willfully egotistic attitude. Yeah, a willful one. If there's an innocent something, some conditioning that's there, that can be totally innocent. That's a different thing altogether. I'm talking about some willful, aggressive, maybe attitude like that. It's just a simple sense. That's it. But we don't pay attention to it. Anyway, that's the point I was making.